They laughed the moment she walked in. A fragile-looking woman, no confidence in her stride, barely able to lift the door of the gun store. They whispered, they smirked, they thought they knew her story. But just 60 minutes later silence filled the room. Every laugh was gone, every face frozen in shock. What happened in that 1 hour will make you question everything. Stay with me till the end, because this story will blow your mind. And before we start, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to Kindness Stories for more incredible real-life tales that change the way you see people. The bell above the glass door chimed as Emma stepped into the gun store, her small frame barely noticeable behind the towering racks of rifles and ammunition. She looked out of place, her worn-out jeans, oversized hoodie, and messy ponytail clashing with the bold confidence of the men inside, all of whom carried themselves like seasoned hunters or ex-military. They turned their heads, and almost in unison, smirks formed on their faces. A few chuckled under their breath. "Sweetheart, the nail salon is down the street," one man said, adjusting his camo cap as he leaned against the counter. Another added with a laugh, "You sure you didn't take a wrong turn? This ain't no toy store." Their laughter echoed through the store, sharp and mocking, but Emma didn't flinch. Her hands trembled slightly, but her eyes, those deep brown eyes, held something none of them noticed at first: determination. She walked straight to the counter where an older man named Jack stood. He was the kind of man who had seen it all: rough hands, years of hunting and law enforcement behind him. He raised an eyebrow and asked, "Can I help you, miss?" Emma swallowed hard before replying softly, "Yes, I need to learn how to shoot." The room erupted again. One man slapped his knee, another whistled sarcastically. "Oh honey, what are you gonna do? Instagram some selfies with a pink pistol," said a tall guy in a leather jacket. Emma ignored them. Her voice steadied as she spoke to Jack. "I need something reliable and powerful." Jack studied her for a moment. There was pain behind her voice, something unspoken, and though curiosity stirred inside him, he didn't ask. Instead, he nodded and said, "Follow me." As he led her toward the back where the handguns were displayed, the men's comments grew louder. "Bet she can't even hold the thing straight. Careful, Jack. She might shoot her own foot." Emma heard every word, and though her cheeks burned, she stayed silent. Inside, however, her heart pounded, not from fear of their words, but from the weight of her own mission. She wasn't here to prove anything to them. She was here because she had no choice. Jack placed a sleek Glock on the counter and said, "This is a good start, simple, safe, reliable. Ever fired one before?" Emma shook her head. Jack exhaled slowly. "All right, safety first." As he began explaining, Emma listened intently, absorbing every detail like her life depended on it, because it did. The clock ticked. 10 minutes passed. Then 20. The laughter had died down a little, replaced by whispers as the men occasionally glanced toward the back, amused at the sight of Emma fumbling to hold the gun properly. But what they didn't see was how quickly she adapted. Her hands stopped, chance improved, her breathing steadied. By the 30-minute mark, Jack was impressed. "You learn fast," he muttered. Emma didn't smile. She only asked, "Where's the range?" Jack led her to the adjoining shooting range. The men followed like spectators at a circus, ready for a show. Phones came out, some ready to record what they thought would be a hilarious disaster. Emma stepped into the booth, her heart hammering, not from nerves, but from memory. Because every time she blinked, she saw the face of the man who had broken into her home 2 nights ago, the man who threatened her family, the man who promised he'd be back. She gripped the gun tighter. Jack stood beside her, instructing calmly, "Line up your sights, slow your breathing, squeeze, don't pull." The first shot rang out, boom. The recoil jolted her arm, but the bullet hit the target. Not bullseye, but close. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Emma didn't stop. She fired again, and again, each shot more controlled, more precise. Sweat formed on her brow, but her focus never wavered. 10 minutes later, when the target was reeled back, the room went silent. Nearly every shot was clustered near the center. Not perfect, but far from amateur. The laughter was gone now, replaced by something heavier: disbelief. Jack looked at her, stunned. "You said you've never shot before." She shook her head. He let out a low whistle. The men exchanged uneasy glances. One tried to laugh it off. "Beginner's luck," he muttered, but his voice lacked conviction. Emma stepped out of the booth, her expression unreadable. Jack asked quietly, "Why are you learning this?" For the first time, Emma's voice cracked. "Because someone's coming for me and I need to be ready." The room froze. No one laughed now. The men who mocked her earlier stood rooted in silence as the weight of her words sank in. Jack's jaw tightened. Do you need help? She shook her head. No. I just need enough to protect the only person I have left. Her voice trembled, but her grip on the gun was steady. And in that moment, they all saw her differently. Not as a fragile woman, but as a warrior preparing for a battle none of them could imagine. Jack placed a firm hand on her shoulder. Then you're not leaving here unprepared. For the next 30 minutes, he trained her relentlessly, fine-tuning every move, correcting every mistake. The men who had laughed now watched in awe as Emma transformed before their eyes. Calm, confident, unshakable. By the end of the hour she hit the bullseye 5 times in a row. When she set the gun down, the silence was deafening. No one smirked. No one spoke. They just stared at the woman who had walked in quietly and left as something entirely different. Emma thanked Jack softly and turned to leave, her steps steady now, her head high. And as the door closed behind her, every man in that store knew one thing. They would never laugh at a woman with that kind of fire in her eyes again. And if this story moved you, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to Kindness Stories. Because real strength isn't about muscle, it's about courage. And sometimes, the quietest people fight the hardest battles. Emma stepped out of the gun store into the cold evening air, clutching the small case that held the Glock like it was a lifeline. The laughter was long gone, but the echoes of those voices still rang in her ears. Not because of the mockery, but because of what they didn't know. They didn't know the terror that chased her shadow. They didn't know why a woman like her would walk into a gun store alone, desperate and determined. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Emma's mind drifted to the night that changed everything, the night she realized the world wasn't safe anymore. 2 nights ago she had been tucking her 6-year-old son, Noah, into bed. He had that sleepy smile he always wore when she read his favorite story, the one about brave knights protecting their kingdoms. "Mommy," he whispered as his eyelids fluttered, "you're my knight." She kissed his forehead and smiled, unaware that the real battle was coming. At 2 a.m., the sound shattered the silence. Glass breaking, heavy footsteps on the wooden floor. Her heart froze as she grabbed her phone with trembling hands and dialed 911, whispering for help. But before she could speak, the voice came. Deep, cold, terrifying. "You think you can run, Emma?" Her blood turned to ice. She knew that voice. Victor Kane. A name that haunted her past like a storm she could never escape. Years ago, she had testified against him. A ruthless criminal who ran an underground trafficking ring. She was the key witness, the one who put him behind bars. But 3 months ago, he was released. And now he was in her house. She clutched Noah, hiding in the closet, her heart pounding against his tiny back. "Where are you, sweetheart?" Victor's voice teased from the living room. "You know I keep my promises." Tears streamed down Emma's face as she tried to stay silent. Then the closet door shook. She muffled Noah's sobs with her hand, praying. A bang, then silence. When she finally dared to peek, he was gone. But on the wall, smeared in red paint, were 3 words SEEU sewn. That night, Emma packed what little she had and drove until the gas light came on, ending up in a small motel on the edge of town. She called the police again, but they said there was nothing they could do without proof of immediate danger. Immediate danger. She could still smell his cologne in her house. That was why she walked into that gun store today. Not because she wanted revenge. Not because she believed in violence. But because No needed her alive. Because if Victor came back, this time, she wouldn't be hiding in a closet. She would be ready. Emma's grip on the steering wheel tightened, as she pulled into the cracked parking lot of the motel. She glanced at the rearview mirror twice, then 3 times. Every pair of headlights on the road made her heart race. Inside the dimly lit room, Noah was curled up on the bed, clutching his stuffed bear. "Mummy," he murmured, rubbing his eyes. "Where were you?" Emma forced a smile. "Just getting something to keep us safe." She sat beside him, brushing his hair back. His innocence was a knife to her heart. She had promised him a safe life, a happy life. And now they were hiding like fugitives. She thought of calling her sister in another state. But Victor would find them. He always did. He had eyes everywhere. Emma locked the door, checked the window, and placed the Glock on the nightstand. She stared at it for a long time. Fear and resolve warring inside her. Could she really pull the trigger if the time came? Could she kill a man to protect her son? Her stomach churned at the thought. But then she looked at Noah, and the answer became clear. Yes, she would. She had to. Hours passed. Midnight came and went. Emma sat in the chair by the window, gun in hand, waiting. Every car that slowed made her breath hitch. At 20:17 a.m. it happened. The crunch of footsteps outside the door. Slow, deliberate. Emma's blood turned cold. She gripped the gun tighter, her pulse pounding in her ears. A shadow moved across the thin motel curtain. Then came the knock. 3 sharp raps. Emma's hands shook, but she raised the gun, pointing at the door. "Who's there?" Her voice cracked. Silence. Then the voice she dreaded most, "Emma." It was Victor, her worst nightmare, standing just feet away. "Open the door. Let's talk." Emma's heart raced so fast she thought it would burst. She glanced at Noah, still asleep, oblivious to the danger. Her finger hovered on the trigger. "Go away. Victor," she shouted, her voice breaking. His laugh was low, cruel. "Or what? You gonna shoot me? You don't have it in you." The doorknob rattled. Then twisted. Emma's breath came in gasps. She aimed, every muscle trembling. The door shook once, twice, then burst open. Victor stepped in, towering, menacing, a wolf in human skin. Emma didn't think. She fired. Once, twice. The shots thundered through the small room. Victor staggered back, eyes wide in shock, before collapsing against the doorframe. For a moment, silence. Then a strangled sound escaped Emma's throat. She dropped the gun, rushing to Noah, pulling him into her arms as he woke up crying. "It's okay, baby. Mommy's here," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. Blue and red lights flooded the room minutes later. The police came, questions were asked. But Emma barely heard them. She sat on the floor, rocking Noah, her body shaking with relief and horror all at once. She hadn't wanted this. She hadn't wanted any of it. But sometimes, to protect what you love, you have to become someone you never thought you could be. 2 days later, Emma stood in front of the same gun store, the morning sun warming her face. She walked inside, and the bell chimed. Jack looked up from behind the counter, surprise flashing across his weathered face. "Emma," he said softly. "You okay?" She nodded, though her eyes glistened. "I wanted to thank you," she whispered, "for taking me seriously when no one else did." Jack studied her, then stepped around the counter, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. "You're stronger than you know," he said. Emma managed a small smile. For the first time in weeks, she felt safe, not because of the gun, but because she had found her strength. And maybe, just maybe, the world wasn't all bad. Maybe there were still people like Jack. People who helped without judgment, who believed when no one else would. She turned to leave, the door closing softly behind her. Outside, the sky was clear, the future uncertain. But for the first time, Emma didn't feel afraid. She felt ready. If this story touched your heart, hit that like button and subscribe to Kindness Stories. Because every act of courage, every quiet battle, deserves to be heard. And sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is keep fighting when the world expects you to fall.